Hi, I'm Jasma. This is the new kitchen. Let's make some holiday cookies. On the menu, we have Mocha Crinkle Cookies, Earl Grey Butter Biscuits, Orange and Cranberry Slice and Bake Cookies, and Marbled Black Sesame Cookies. Starting off with the Mocha Crinkle Cookies. For this, you'll need 2 bowls. In the first bowl, crack in an egg. To that, add the white granulated sugar, instant espresso powder, vanilla extract, and flavorless oil. I brought a lot of things to college, pretty much all my baking supplies, soon you'll see. But the C-stand didn't quite make the cut. Whisk together your wet ingredients until all of the coffee granules have dissolved and it is a smooth mixture. Then into your second bowl, mix together the dry ingredients. So we have the all-purpose flour, cocoa powder, baking powder, and a pinch of salt. Then just add the dry mix into the wet mix and fold with your spatula until it forms a dough. This is going to look more like a brownie batter than a cookie dough, but that's okay, it's supposed to be a little bit on the stickier side. Then I'm just transferring the dough into a smaller bowl and covering with plastic wrap. Since this is an oil-based dough, it needs a little bit longer to firm up in the fridge, and it's really important that you chill it all the way through because a cold dough is what's going to puff up in the oven while it bakes and create that really crackled look. This needs at least 2 hours. You can also make this the night before. Just make sure that you're accounting for that extra time. Once the dough is ready, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and prep a baking tray by lining it with some parchment paper. For the sugar coating, combine some icing sugar with a little bit of all-purpose flour or cornstarch and mix until combined. Once you're ready to bake the cookies, take the dough out of the fridge, scoop it out using an ice cream scoop. The dough will still be a bit sticky, but as you can see, it should have firmed up significantly. Drop it into the sugar coating and coat it nice and evenly. Be very generous with it. You want a pretty thick coat of the icing sugar, and just repeat until you've done this with all of your dough. Bake these for 9 to 10 minutes at 350, and they should still be on the slightly softer side so the inside is a bit fudgy, and they'll come out nice and crinkled like this. Moving into the butter-based cookies, you're going to need a lot of softened butter. Butter that you're supposed to whip up should ideally be squishy so that it can actually retain the air. And what you're supposed to do is to take it out of the fridge and leave it at room temperature until it becomes soft. Now, despite being a frequent baker, I rarely have the foresight nor the patience to do that. So here is a very easy way to soften up a cold stick of butter using the microwave. Place your stick of butter inside, slightly off-centered, and the trick is to microwave this at 5-second intervals, but flipping the butter onto a different side every time. This way, the microwave isn't going to target the same spot and melt certain parts, and you're going to end up with a really evenly softened stick of butter. Now let's put that butter to good use and make these Earl Grey butter biscuits. Add icing sugar to the softened butter along with the Earl Grey tea leaves. The tea that I'm using is straight from a tea bag and it was already fairly finely grounded, but you might have to pass your tea leaves through a food processor or like a coffee grinder to make sure that it's grounded. Before going into this mixture with an electric mixer, use a spatula to just press the sugar into the butter. This will save you from a lot of inhaled sugar and having to clean up a big mess. Then my little hand mixer here is ready to make its debut. Beat the butter on medium-high speed until it becomes pale and fluffy. Make sure to scrape down the sides every once in a while. Then loosely beat an egg and add a tablespoon of this to the butter mixture. You can also substitute it with milk. And also add a little vanilla extract. Then just keep mixing until all the liquids are combined with the butter and the mixture is once again fluffy. We are now ready for the dry ingredients. So in a bowl, combine some all-purpose flour with cornstarch and a pinch of salt. Add that to the butter mixture, and once again go in first with a spatula to fold that through before letting the electric mixer join the party. If you skip this step the first time around, inhaling sugar is probably not that bad, but you definitely don't want to experience a cloud of all-purpose flour in your face. Make sure not to overmix this. You just want to go until there's no more dry streaks of flour inside of the dough. And then I'm just prepping my piping bag by fitting it with a star tip, and then we can transfer over the dough. Before we're ready to pipe out the dough, take whatever is left on the beaters and place it onto the bottom of the tray. This is going to allow the parchment paper to have something to stick to so that it won't move around when you actually begin piping out your design. Once these are piped, I like to pop it into the freezer for 10 to 15 minutes just for it to get really cold. If you chill this before baking it, the shape stays much more intact and the design doesn't melt together as much, so it ends up with a much cleaner and sharper look, which I'm very particular about. So into the freezer it goes. Once they're chilled, bake them off at 350 for 10 to 12 minutes, and you want to let them cool slightly before moving it around and transferring it onto a cooling rack. Moving on to the orange cranberry slice and bake cookies. To prep the orange, you want to wash and dry it thoroughly, then zest and juice half of it. To the softened butter, add your icing sugar and freshly zested orange zest. Once again, mix it through and then beat until the mixture becomes fluffy and pale. Add the measured orange juice, and then continue beating until that is incorporated. Now we can add the all-purpose flour, pinch of salt, and dried cranberries to the butter mixture. And then, say it with me, we're gonna mix it through with a spatula before beating it with an electric mixer. Once the dough comes together, transfer it onto a sheet of plastic wrap and then roll it out into a log. Try and make it as circular as possible, tightly close off the ends, and then this is going to go into the freezer to chill until it's nice and firm. Once you're ready to bake it, take it out of the plastic wrap and slice it up into nice and even slices. And the amount of cookies you get out of each batch depends on how thick you're slicing these. Place these onto your baking tray lined with parchment paper, and you don't have to leave too much space between each one since these don't spread a whole ton. Then they're ready to be baked at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 12 minutes until they're nice and golden brown. And this step is optional, but I like to drizzle on just a little bit of white chocolate. I think it pairs well with the cranberry and makes these a little more festive. And lastly, I'm very excited about these. We're gonna make the marbled black sesame cookies. Begin by beating the butter and sugar together until it is pale and fluffy. Then add in a tablespoon of the beaten egg and a splash of vanilla extract. Keep on mixing, and then we're going to add the dry ingredients, which is just the all-purpose flour and a pinch of salt. This is a very simple cookie base that we're making. And once the dough comes together, transfer this onto a piece of plastic wrap and wrap it up tightly into a rectangular slab. Then place this into the freezer to chill slightly until it becomes firm. Using my mini chopper, you can also use a food processor, I'm grounding up some black sesame seeds. Try to ground these as finely as possible. You want them to basically become like a powder. To achieve the marbled look, I'm using a technique inspired by the brilliant Lon Lam of America's Test Kitchen. I was actually an intern there, which was hands down the coolest thing I've ever done. And she was inspired to develop this technique through watching polymer clay, like jewelry videos, which I thought was so cool. I've never seen it done with cookies before. And this is one of those things where you'll have to trust the process. So here goes. Once the cookie dough is firm, unwrap it from the plastic and then cut this up into random medium-sized pieces. Then toss the pieces of dough in the ground black sesame seeds until they're evenly coated, and then shake off any excess. Then just smush all of the pieces of dough together until it forms one ball of dough. I'm shaping this into a rectangular block because I want rectangular shaped cookies, but you can also roll this into a log and make circular ones. Finally, press any of the remaining ground black sesame seeds onto the exterior of this piece of dough, and then place this into the freezer to chill until it is firm. Once you're ready to bake these, you can slice them up and reveal the marble design. Arrange these onto your baking tray. They also don't spread a whole ton, and then bake them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 12 minutes. Just a heads up that these are fairly small batch cookie recipes. I know that holiday cookies usually come in much larger serving sizes, but it's easier to scale up than it is to scale down. And I wanted to develop recipes for people who live alone, but also if you just want to try out a new flavor and you don't want to commit to a huge batch, but you're more than welcome to change the quantity of the recipe depending on your baking needs. I hope you enjoyed these 4 new cookie flavors and that they'll make an appearance in your cookie box. Happy holidays!